Hello and welcome back to another reading stream. Today we're going to be continuing on with the same book that we've been reading for the past few reading streams. That is Ovid's Metamorphoses. Metamorphoses. I completely forget where we were last time. I think we just had a gang of heroes kill the Caledonian bear. I think it was the Caledonian bear. And I remember I was curious if this was the same bear or boar, is a Caledonian boar, or was it a bear? I'm not sure. That Hercules had killed, but that was different. He kills a different boar. I forget which one he kills. The something boar. And these sorts of stories are all very similar. Hercules is the one that stands out the most because he's the only one that really sort of becomes a god at the end of it, and he's really quite different from all the others. Okie dokie, let's see if our hand cam scene works properly. Here we are. We'll see if the lighting's any good. I've slightly adjusted the filters on it from the last time. Excuse me. From the last time we were reading, when we was reading Aristotle. That book was quite dark, so we had to increase the brightness. Oh, it looks like we got to the end of one of the chapters. That's very nice. Although, to be honest, the chapter delineations in these old books are very rarely actually real. They're put in there by the translators to break up what is otherwise a very large single book. But let's just sort of head straight into it. I think that'll be the way to go. And see what it's all about. The lighting's a bit bright. I've sort of got the curtains open a bit. If it proves to be too bright, I will close it. But I've forgotten the pen. I always forget this. There we go. Book 9. Then Neptune's son, brave Theseus. I didn't know Theseus was Neptune's son. I didn't know who his father was, but asked Achilles, yeah, I think it was Achilles, why he was groaning, and how his forehead had come by this injury. The river of Caledon, who wore a circlet of reeds in his tangled locks, answered him in these words. It is a painful thing you ask of me. Who would want to speak of battles in which he had been defeated? However, I shall tell you what happened, for the glory of having fought is greater than the disgrace of having been beaten, and I am much consoled in my defeat by the thought that my opponent was so great a hero. Perhaps you have heard tell of Deianira. She was the most lovely girl who, in days gone by, roused jealous hopes in the hearts of many suitors, and I, along with the rest, went to the house of the man I hoped would be my father-in-law. Son of Partheon, I said, take me as your daughter's husband. My words were echoed by Hercules, whereupon the other suitors left the field to us two. My rival declared that he would give his bride Jupiter as a father-in-law, and called to mind his own famous labours. I don't like how they've put that in capital letters. I know the labours of Hercules, but it doesn't make it a proper noun. And the fact that he had succeeded in carrying out his stepmother's commands. I counted his claims, saying, it is disgraceful that a god should yield place to a mortal, for in those days Hercules was not yet a god. In me you see the king of the waters which flow through your country in their slanting channels. As a son-in-law, I shall not be a stranger, sent from foreign shores, but one of your own people, and a part of your kingdom. Only do not hold it against me that Juno, the queen of heaven, does not hate me, that I have never been punished by having labours imposed upon me. As to your other point, son of Alcmene, Jupiter, whom you boastfully declare to be your father, is either not your father at all, or if he is, it was guilt that made him so. When you claim him as father, you convict your mother of adultery. Choose whether you prefer to say that Jove is not really your father, or to admit that you were born as a result of a piece of disgraceful behaviour. Hercules had long been glowering at me as I spoke. Instead of controlling his flaring rage as a hero should, he retorted, "I am better with my hands than with my tongue. Provided I can defeat you in the fight, you can have your verbal victory." And he rushed fiercely upon me. I was ashamed to draw back after my recent boasting. Flinging off my garments, I raised my arms, held them crooked before my chest in a position of defence, and prepared myself to fight. My opponent sprinkled me with dust that he had gathered in his cupped palms, and in his turn was covered with yellow sand. Hello, welcome, welcome. Is that T-I or T-L? T-L, BG, hello. We are reading Ovid's Metamorphoses, and we're learning today about Hercules, or who's already done most of his labours. I guess they don't feature much in this book. And here he is the antagonist to Theseus, who wants to marry a girl. I forget the girl's name. And they've just started fighting, as men do. Discovered yellow sand. Till he was all golden. Then he clutched at my neck, and again, was it Hippolyta? Let's find out. Let's see if it mentions the name. Deianira, I think. Yes, Deianira. Although this is a Roman book, so if Deianira is Hippolyta, which sometimes happens, we'll probably find out, depending on who gets the girl. You know, we're reading here, Hercules and not Heracles. It's the Roman edition of these characters. Then he clutched at my neck, and again my rapidly shifting legs, or seemed to clutch, attacking me from every angle. But my weight was my salvation. I was impervious to his assaults, just as a massive rock, besieged by the roaring waves, stands fast and is kept safe by its very bulk. Hippolyta... Oh, I didn't know she died more than once. I know she dies in one way. I think... Does she kill Hercules by accident? Or am I thinking of a different girl? The wife of Hercules. She gives him like a dress or something. She gives him a tunic and it's poisoned. Maybe that was a different character. We drew a little apart, and then rushed to join battle again, each holding his ground and determined not to yield. Foot pressed against foot, leaning forward from the waist. I thrust my fingers against his fingers, my head against his head. I have seen sturdy bulls rush upon one another in just the same way, when they are fighting to win the sleekest cow in all the meadows for their prize. Hippolyta dies at the hands of Heracles' madness. That's what I was thinking, right? Something to do with poison given by a centaur, right? The herds look on, trembling, not knowing which will be the victor, and gain such mastery. 3 times Hercules tried, without avail, to thrust away my breast that was locked against his own. At the 4th attempt, he shook off my grip and loosened my straining arms. Then, striking me a blow that whirled me about, for I am resolved to tell the truth, he flung himself with all his weight upon my back and clung there. Believe me, I am not just trying to enhance your respect for me. It is no exaggeration to say that I really seemed to be crushed down by a mountain on top of me. When Hercules was going to get the belt, because Hippolyta had her father's belt, and in Greek myth, Hippolyta is the queen of the Amazons and the daughter of Ares. Daughter of Ares. This one, who is this? This is also the daughter of a god. Does it say which god this is the daughter of? They did not mention Jupiter, I don't think. Partheon. Who is Partheon? That doesn't sound like a god to me. Oh, hello, Billy. Welcome, welcome. This is not that scary. This is a very light book. The book reading we was doing earlier this week of Aristotle, that was scary. But this is very light. This is like a children's book. In fact, many of these stories probably would be told in children's tales in one way or another. It's a fight. It's like anime. They're doing an anime fight. He even gets thrown in the air and stuff. Literally anime. Where was I? However, I barely managed to insert my arms, streaming with sweat, beneath his body, and so, with difficulty, was able to loosen his cruel grip on my breast. Still, he pressed me hard and prevented me, panting and breathless as I was, from recovering my strength. In this way, he got control of my neck, and then, at last, I was forced to my knees, and bit the dust. What, did he die? Well, I think he literally means he bit the dust. I don't know. Maybe this is where the saying comes from. I don't think he died here. Proved inferior to him in valour, I had to resort to stratagems, and slipped from the hero's grasp by turning myself into a long snake. Is this a thing people typically do in fights? Speaking of myths and legends, I am writing a story. Writing stories is hard. I'm guessing you're from the writing part of the writing and reading category, which really should be reading and writing, but but you do make up 99% of the category. But when I had coiled my body into sinuous spirals and was flickering my forked tongue, hissing fiercely, Hercules of Tiryns laughed and mocked my tricks. "I was defeating snakes in my cradle," he cried, "and though you may be more terrible than any other, Achilleus, yet you are only one solitary serpent. And how small a part of the Lernaean Hydra that will be." I remember having to read and write my five paragraphs essay. 5 paragraphs essay. You know, you see, Billy, depending on what the essay was about, that's either extremely easy or extremely difficult. You know, when you're in school, they tell you to write, 500 words or something. You're like, oh my god, how can I write that many? But then when you go to like higher education, they say, okay, explain this in 500 words. You're like, I can't do that. It's more words than that. It's about a young man who dies on his way to college. Tragic. But gets found by Father Time. I think I had that in a cartoon once. Who gives the main character a pocket watch to travel back in time. Morty! And save humanity. Wait, why is humanity in danger? The main character goes through several points in humanity's history. I thought he just wanted to get to college. But time travel is always a good premise. Now, I'm confused here. Are we Theseus or are we Achilleus? Mesopotamia, that's Middle Island in Greek. Whereabouts is Mesopotamia? It's not Crete, is it? No, I'm being dumb. I don't know geography. No, I had a globe and I threw it away. Because it was taking up too much room. I should have kept the globe. Oh well. Yeah, I usually just make things up from examples. This was allowed, which was funny. Modern Iraq. Okay, that's close to Crete, right? It's like you can see it from there, right? If you just have really good eyesight. The Hydra throve on its wounds, and none of its 100 heads could be cut off with impunity, without being replaced by 2 new ones, which made its neck stronger than ever. Yet in spite of its branching snakes reborn as they were cut down, in spite of the strength it derived from attempts to harm it, still I got the upper hand of the Hydra, vanquished the monster, and ripped its body open. Imagine then what will happen to you, who have changed yourself into a mere semblance of a snake, employing weapons that are not natural to you, and concealing yourself under a borrowed shape. With these words, he fastened his fingers tightly around the upper part of my throat. I was being throttled, as if my neck were caught in a vice, struggled to wrest my jaws out of the grip of his thumbs. Is this Ryu? Hold on. It is Ryu. What did he wrote here? Where did he wrote it? I've lost where I was. As if my neck were caught in a vice. If you was in school and you wrote this in school, the teacher would tell you this is incredibly uncreative. Like a vice! Whoa! Oh my god. I have no idea what I assume. I'm gonna. His only salvation here is if Ovid also uses the word vice just in Latin or whatever language this was written in. You know, I really hated the. I'll be honest. I'll be honest. I really hated the what's it called? English sort of creative writing education where they'll teach you to use more unique words for like adjectives and stuff instead of just using the same ones, but with no real reason behind it. You're just told to like go to the dictionary and pick a word. And there's no real connection with the significance of what each word mean, how each one has a subtly different meaning, you know? You know, it's like you know, if you're dealing with something that's like massive, you know, you'll say, you know, it's bigger than that, it's large, you know, it's, and they just sort of use words. Crete is an island in mainland Greece. Ah, I do know that. I didn't know that was where linear A came from. I thought that was a bit later, but actually it makes sense that it would be from there. Okie dokie then. I hate vocab. In any language, vocab is always the longest part. What makes my story unique is that you type in dead languages. But if they're if they're dead, I thought you mean like unknown languages, but yeah, dead languages are fine. That's always good. We gotta undeadify dead languages. The thing is, we didn't even use the words. It's just, excuse me. Remember 20 different words. Yeah, I guess there was a part of that as well. And a lot of words you learn in sort of English education, they're kind of rubbish, to be honest. Like they're like, they're not very what's the word, trendy. They're not very trendy, you know. Like they people don't relate to them if it's not something you know you're likely to ever use in your daily life. Even if you're in like a highly educated environment, you gotta give them up. So he overcame me in this guise too, but there remained my third shape, that of a fierce bull. I therefore transformed myself into a bull, and as such renewed the fight. My adversary, attacking from the left, flung his arms around the bulging muscles of my neck. As I charged away, he followed close behind me, dragging at my head, till he forced my horns into the hard ground, and laid me prostrate in the deep dust. Nor was this enough. As he grasped my stiff horn in his cruel hand, he broke and tore it off, mutilating my brow. But the Naiads filled it with fruits and fragrant flowers, and sanctified it. And now my horn enriches the goddess of plenty. Hey, we've got a surprise origin of the god's cornucopia. When he had finished speaking, one of his attendants, a nymph, dressed in the style of Diana, came forward, her hair streaming over her shoulders, and brought all the autumn's harvest in the rich horn, with delicious apples for their dessert. Dawn came, and when the first rays of the sun struck the mountain tops, the young men went on their way, for they did not wait till the river was flowing peacefully and smoothly, nor even till all the floods had subsided. Achilles had hid his rustic features, and the head that had lost his horns in the depths of his waters. It was Achilles. I thought it was Theseus. I think Theseus is listening to the story. And since this is Mesopotamia, I use cuneiform signs for clay tablets and signs. I'd like to have a go at learning cuneiform Sumerian one of these days. In fact, if you do know this language, you may be able to answer a question of mine. So I know a little bit about Greek and Latin. They're sort of the classical antiquary languages, and they're very challenging languages. But yeah, and naturally so, they're a very sophisticated culture. However, the more ancient cultures, the Babylonians, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, these sorts of cultures were quite a bit further back. And not only is much of their text lost, but they were I suspect that they were a bit more primitive anyway. And so I wonder, are these languages not actually that challenging to read? A bit strange, perhaps, having to write with triangles or drawings of birds and such. But But is it possible that you could probably learn, something like Egyptian hieroglyphs or Sumerian cuneiform for fun in a relatively short period of time? It looks like my hunch was right. I'll have to do that at one point. Just for the fun of it, just for the bragging rights. Like, I think I've heard, there's one language, I think it's Gothic, I'm not sure what time period that's from, and I've heard there's only about 2,000 words that survive from it. You could learn that in a weekend. Well, maybe not a weekend, but you know what I mean. Of course, it's probably not enough to do anything with the language, but, you can say you know all of Gothic, which I think is kind of funny. However, there's a website that stores Sumerian lexicons. Oh, I bet there is. There's those kinds of websites are so far and few between these days. So much of the internet these days is just Twitter and YouTube, and these sort of niche websites that are just sort of doing their own thing are always dying out. So it's good to hear some still survive. However, the loss of this adornment, taken from him by Hercules, was the only humiliation Achilles suffered. In all other respects he was unhurt, and he concealed his loss by wearing on his head a wreath of willow trees, or of reeds. Fierce Nessus, on the other hand, was utterly destroyed by his love for that same Deianira, when Hercules' swift arrow pierced him in the back. That, and I use Wiktionary. Oh, this is another thing I was thinking of. So you can find, if you go to Google Translate, there's like 200 languages on there. Most of them are completely useless languages, of which the speakers of that language probably don't even own computers. But there's many, but fortunately they do have Latin on there, which is really quite surprising because nobody speaks Latin. But they don't have ancient Greek. They've got modern Greek, but they don't have ancient Greek. You'd think, they've got all these languages, and it's the kind of thing these sorts of companies would do, where they think, okay, let's go have ancient Egyptian and ancient Chinese and all these kinds of languages, because why not? They could totally do it, and it would be a very useful tool, I think. Wiktionary has a Sumerian word table. I bet that's helpful. Not many people have a Sumerian keyboard, I imagine. Well, I don't even know if they're an alphabetic language. I have no idea. Jove's son, Hercules, was returning with his new bride to his native city when he came to the raging water. There, I need to drink some water. That's a sign. When you're fumbling over the words, that's a sign you need to drink some water. I've got Lexilogos for ancient Greek. You use that one. That is very helpful. What else do I have? Yeah, I have Lexilogos. I think that's for the keyboard. And then there's something called Logion, the University of Chicago for I think for a Greek dictionary, which is handy. And then what's this one? And then lsj.gr for English to Greek, which is handy. But all an imperfect solution. Anatolian hieroglyphs. Oh, I've moved everything. Come on, I can't see what I'm looking at. I've only got one monitor, so it's an eternal challenge. When he came to the raging waters of Avernus, the river was fuller than usual, increased by the winter's rains, and it was impossible to cross the flood with its swirling eddies. Hercules had no fear for himself, but he was troubled about his wife. Then Nessus came up, strong of limb and well acquainted with the fords. I shall carry your wife across and set her on the further bank, he told Hercules. You keep your strength for swimming. So the Boeotian hero trusted the centaur with his Caledonian princes. Speaking of Trojans, I saw a clip of that new movie, The Odyssey. And I have no plans to watch the whole movie because I saw one clip, and here's what I saw. I saw the Trojan soldiers. They come up to the beach. I assume having fought, the Greeks had left that part of the story, and they see a person standing there, a Greek soldier. I forget the name. And they shoot arrows. They throw javelins at him. And standing right behind him is the Trojan horse, half buried in the sand. And the javelins pierce the Trojan horse. Then after they decide to take it back to Troy, as they do, they drag it on its side through the dirt, and I don't know how they get it in the wool. I don't see that in the clip. Yeah, I'm not watching that movie. Come on now. In what's his name? Virgil's Aeneid. The Trojan horse is a sacred offering to Minerva, very important god to the Trojans. And immediately I don't know how they know it's maybe someone tells them, or maybe it's got it written on it or something. They acknowledge this very immediately, that this is a sacred gift to Minerva that must be treated with utmost respect. They must bring this into their city and put this on their altar. And everyone agrees that this is very important. They have no reason to disrespect this in any way possible. In fact, there's one person, what's his name, Lao Kun. He disrespects the gift. He is the one who puts his spear through the Trojan horse, and he is immediately punished by the gods extremely overtly in front of everyone. They see him killed and his children killed by the gods through snakes, and everyone's like, yeah. Of course he was. Let's bring this sacred gift into the city. And furthermore, to bring it in, they put it on wheels. Okay, the word is rotarum, the Latin word for wheels. They put it on wheels. They tear down their own walls to bring this gift in. This is a sacred offering. And then, of course, it's a Trojan horse. But what the hell? What the hell? Jesus Christ. I'm not watching that film. So, the Boeotian hero trusted the centaur. The centaur. Who's the centaur's name? I wasn't paying attention. Nessus. Nessus the centaur. He gives... I wonder if he'll give Hercules a gift after this. Is this the centaur I'm thinking of? Wait, no, it can't be. I don't see any reason why this centaur would be so mean. I don't know, we'll find out. I know that centaurs don't get on well with Hercules. So the Boeotian hero trusted the centaur with his Caledonian princess, though she was pale with fear, equally afraid of the river and of Nessus. Hercules himself threw his club and his curved bow across the river. Then, just as he was weighed down by his quiver and his lion's skin, he shouted, "Let me complete the conquest of the rivers already begun." Why would you say something like this? Who's he talking to? Without hesitation, without seeking to find where the flood was least fierce, he leaped into the stream, scorning to be carried across by the help of the current. He had reached the bank and was picking up the bow he had thrown across when he heard his wife's cries and realized that Nessus was planning to betray his trust. "You scoundrel!" cried Hercules. "Where are you off to, you fool, trusting in your speed of foot? You, Nessus the centaur, it is you I am speaking. Pay heed, and do not come between me and mine. If you have no respect for me, surely the will on which your father is tormented shall prevent you from alliances that are forbidden." So this Nessus is the son of Ixius? I didn't know. No, Ixius was a human, right? Ixius wasn't a horse. Unless there are more people being put on the wheel. Still, you will not escape. Confident that you are in your horse's hooves, for I shall overtake you, not on foot, but with my deadly weapons. His actions made good. His last words for the arrow which he shot pierced the fleeing Nessus in the back. Its barbed tip protruded from his breast. When the shaft was pulled out of the centaur's body, blood gushed out from both wounds, blood tainted with the horrible poison of the Linnaean Hydra. Nessa did not let it flow away. I shall not die unavenged, he muttered, dipping his shirt in the warm blood, presented it to the bride he had stolen, pretending that it was a charm for inspiring loves. Ah, okay, so this is the same woman who I was thinking of. And this is also the same centaur who I was thinking of. A long time passed, and the whole world had heard of the deeds of the mighty Hercules, and of his stepmother's hatred. It was just as he had conquered Oechalia, and was preparing to offer sacrifices to Jupiter at Cannaeum, that gossiping rumour, who loves to mingle false with true, and nourished by her own lies, grows steadily from small beginnings, outstripped him on his homeward way, and brought to Deianira's ears the tale that her husband, the son of Amphitryon, was in love with Iole. The devoted wife believed the story at first. Sorry, I was reading wrong there. Well, for the Greek Trojan, it would be different, since it would be about the main character accidentally going into the Amazons only to get found by Panophilia, or one of the other Amazonian warriors, and forced to walk to the throne and look upon the Queen Hippolyta. Hippolyta would mock the main character because in mythology the Amazonians are a woman-only society. Based and Artemis-pilled. I read a book. No, I was thinking there's a different one of like a, how does it go? I forget who it was. There's another play I read of some girl devoted herself to Artemis, and then some jealousy happens for either to her or from her. I think her mother or something makes, and then the gods intervene, and they make it out that she's in love with like her brother or something. I can't remember exactly how it goes, and then I think she gets shamed. I think she drives off a cliff with a chariot or something. That is the worst memory I've ever had all the time for all time. It was after he had conquered Oechalia. Oh, and he was preparing to offer sacrifices to Jupiter. Then gossip and rumour, who loves to make a false. Yeah, okay, I wasn't paying attention at all. Who loves to mingle false with true, and nourished by her own lies, grows steadily from small beginnings, outstripped him on his homeward way, and brought to Deianira's ears the tale that her husband, the son of Amphitryon, was in love with Iole. The devoted wife believed the story. At first, stricken by the report of her husband's new attachment, she burst into tears, and gave vent to her grief in piteous sobbing. But then she exclaimed, "Why do I cry? My rival will rejoice to see me weep. She will soon be here, so I must hurry and think out some plan while I still have the chance, before another takes my place as his wife. Should I reproach him, or keep silence? Go back to Caledon, or stay here? Shall I leave this house, or make myself a source of annoyance to them if I can do nothing more? What if I were to remember that I am your sister, Malaga? Make ready for some daring deed, and show, by killing my rival, to what lengths a woman can be driven by the grief and pain of being slighted." She pondered the various courses open to her, and of them all chose to send the shirt, impregnated with Nessus's blood, to strengthen anew her husband's dying love, knowing no more than he did what she was giving him. The unhappy woman handed Lycus the garment that was to be the cause of her own sorrow, and with persuasive words bade him carry her present to her husband. Hercules, all unsuspecting, took the gift and wrapped around his shoulders the poison of the Lernaean Hydra. The first fires had been kindled, and the hero was making offerings of incense. reciting prayers to the gods, and pouring a libation of wine from his goblet over the marble altars. Meanwhile, the violence of the poison, heated and melted by the fire, coursed right through his limbs to their fullest parts. With his customary courage, he suppressed his groans as long as he could, but when the suffering was beyond endurance, he flung over the altars, and filled wooded Goethe with his cries. He tried to tear off the deadly garments with all speed, but wherever the cloth was dragged away, it dragged his skin with it, and horrible to tell, either clung to his limbs, resisting all attempts to pull it off, or left lacerated flesh, revealing his massive bones. You know, the same thing happened to me earlier today, in fact. My kitchen gloves, I don't know what I did. Maybe I left them in the sun too long and they melted, and so I put them on, and as I was like ripping them off, they were sticking to my skin, and it was really sticky, and it was quite painful. Literally the same. But basically, I want the first part to predate the Iliad, because the goal of this art would be to help the Walusa, aka Troy, to be free from the Hittite regime. I see. To be honest, I don't know what happens to the east of Troy. It's sort of, you know, I only get the Greek perspective, the Greek mythological perspective. Saturated by the burning poison, hissed and boiled like white-hot lion plunged into icy water. There was no limit to his agony. Greedy flames sucked in his heart. Dark perspiration poured from his whole frame. His scorched sinews crackled, and the hidden pestilence melted his bones. Raising his hands to the stars, he cried, "O Juno, daughter of Saturn, feast your eyes on my disasters. Look down from on high upon my torment, and gaze your fill till your barbarous heart is satisfied. Or if I am so wretched an object that even an enemy, even you, must pity me, and then take away this cruelly tortured, hateful soul that was born for toil. This will be your gift to me, a fitting one for a stepmother to bestow. Was it for this that I quelled Bucerius, the king who defiled his temples with the blood of strangers? For this that I denied cruel Antaeus access to his parent earth, from whom he drew his strength? For this that I faced, unflinching, these triple-bodied monsters, the Spanish herdsman and the dog Cerberus? Are these the hands that forced down the horns of the mighty bull, lent their aid to Aelis, the waters of Stymphalus? Or to Parthenius' woods, thanks to whose strength I brought home the Amazon's sword belt of wrought gold. Sword belt of wrought gold, how useless! And the apples which the unsleeping dragon guarded closely. The centaurs did not resist me, nor yet the boar that ravaged Arcadia. Nor did the prophet, the Hydra, laid losses gave it new strength and redoubled its powers. Again there was the time when I saw the Thracian horses, fattened on human blood, their stalls full of mangled bodies, and no sooner than I destroyed them, dispatching them and their master too. The huge lion of Nemea lies dead, throttled by these hands. I have borne the sky upon these shoulders. Implacable Juno grew tired of issuing orders. I was tired of carrying them out. Well, in history, Troy was ruled by Alexander, and Troy itself was a vassal state of the Hittite kingdom. There was also a Hittite warlord named Priam. I believe it. I can believe it. The timeline matches up. Also, Hercules is literally dying an agonizing death here. How is he coming out with this such verbosity? He's dropping bars while dying. But now a new plague is upon me, which no amount of courage can withstand, no weapon of war overcome. Consuming fire steals into the depths of my lungs, feeding on all my limbs, and that while my enemy, King Eurystheus, is strong and well, and there are men who can believe in gods. Such were the cries of the wounded warrior as he made his way over the heights of Oetia, like some wild bull carrying a hunting spear fixed in his body. When the huntsman has wounded him and fled, often he could be seen, groaning and gnashing his teeth, trying to rip the whole garments to pieces, bringing trees crashing down, venting his wrath on the mountains, and stretching up his arms to heavens that were his father's home. Suddenly, he caught sight of the terrified Lycus, who was hiding in a hollow cave. Pain had roused him to the pitch of madness. Was it you, Lycus, who gave me this fatal gift? Are you responsible for my death? Lycus trembled and grew pale with fear as he timorously sought to excuse himself. But while he was still speaking and was trying to put his hands round the hero's knees, Hercules seized him and, swinging him round 4 times, flung him into the waters of the Euboea, more violently than if he had been hurled from a sling. His body, as if it went soaring through the air, hardened into stone. Just as rain, they say, is frozen into stone by chilling winds, and a softly whirling snow too is packed and round into thick hailstones. So the men of old declared that when Lycus was flung through the air by Hercules' strong arms, fear drained away his blood and all his moisture, and he was turned into hard, flinty rock. Even now there is a little reef in the Euboean Sea that juts out of the waves and keeps traces of human shape. Sailors are afraid to set foot on it, as it would feel their weight, and they call it Lycus. As for the Iliad portion, historically this took place at the tail end of the Trojan War. Well, it takes place at the tail end of the Trojan War, both historically and mythologically. I see no contradiction there. Let's drink some water. That's empty. You know, I bought some sausage rolls today and I really regret eating all of them in one sitting. I shouldn't have done that. You gain nothing by eating food in one sitting. You only shorten the food you get. We already read that. Then Hercules, the renowned son of Jupiter, cut down the trees which grew on lofty Oeta, and built them up into a pyre. He told Philolectes, the son of Poeas, to take his bow, his huge quiver, and the arrows that were destined to see Troy a second time. Then, with the help of his friend, he kindled the pyre, and while the greedy flames were taking hold on the pile, laid the skin of the Nemean lion on top of the heap of tree trunks, and lay down, his neck resting on his club, and his face an expression no different from that of a guest, reclining among the wine cups with garlands on his head. Now the flames had gained strength, and were roaring as they spread in all directions, attacking limbs that heeded them not at all, and a hero who despised them. The gods were afraid for Earth's champion, till Jupiter, perceiving their anxiety, addressed them in these welcome words. The fear which you display pleases me, and with my whole heart I freely congratulate myself that I am called ruler and father of a people who do not forget their benefactors. I am glad that my son is protected by your goodwill as well as mine. For though you pay this tribute to his mighty exploits, the honour you do him reflects honour on me too. But indeed you must not let your faithful hearts be filled with groundless fears. Do not be dismayed by the flames blazing on Oetia's heights. Hercules, who conquers all, will conquer the fire you see there. Only the human part, which he owes to his mother, will fill Vulcan's power. What he derives from me is eternal, beyond the reach of death, and not to be overcome by any flames. When that part has fulfilled its time on earth, I shall receive into it the flames of heaven, confident that my action will be a source of rejoicing to all the gods. If there is anyone, however, who is likely to be annoyed at Hercules becoming a god, and grudges him the reward he has been given, even such a one will learn that Hercules deserved the gift, and will approve it in spite of private feelings. The gods applauded. Even Jupiter's royal wife was seen to listen to the rest of his speech without any harsh looks, though she did frown at his last words, resenting the reference to herself. Meanwhile, Vulcan had stripped Hercules of whatever fire could ravage, and the form of the hero was left quite unrecognizable, retaining none of his likeness to his mother, but only the signs of his descent from Jove. Just as a serpent renews its youth, sloughing its old age with its skin, and is left fresh and shining with its new scales, so when the Tyrian hero had put off his mortal shape, the better part of him grew vigorous, and he began to appear greater than before, a majestic figure of august dignity. Then the whoa! I bet that says August in Latin as well. Then the omnipotent father swept him up through the hollow clouds in his 4-horse chariot and set him among the glittering stars. Atlas felt the added weight. There's an interesting thing here. It makes me curious. The book describes him, his mortal form, having been burned away, and what's left is unrecognizable. None of the likeness of his mother. So, and I don't think they're talking about a skeleton here. I think they're talking about something different, something we don't understand. He becomes a god. He doesn't look like Hercules anymore. He looks different. He has lost the human appearance, but he retains the divine part that was either visible or not visible. Fascinating. What sort of god is he? This is a very old story. You know, it's older than the Greek Dark Ages. You know, as you know, Hercules is practically a caveman. You know, he has a bow and arrow and a club. He doesn't carry an axe or a sword. He carries caveman weapons, basically. He's very ancient. What were their notions of a god? And for something to burn away, it can't look like a human, because that part was burned away. It was something unrecognizable. So what does this deified Hercules look like? He becomes a star, somewhere written here. Is that what they mean? He has lost all human form, and he is just a star? He is just a constellation now? Is that what they mean to say here? Set him among the glittering stars? Do they mean to say that he is literally the stars, and that is what the gods look like, according to this ancient conception of the gods? I wonder. It's so hard to understand the minds of ancient people. Meanwhile, the anger of Eurystheus, son of Sphenele, had not yet been appeased, and he was visiting upon Hercules' children the fierce hatred he felt for their father. Alcmene of Argolis was worn out with long-continued anxiety, but she had Iole as her confidante, to whom she could pour out the lament of an old woman, and relate her own misfortunes and exploits of her son, to which the whole world bore witness. At Hercules' request, Hylas had taken Iole into his home, and to his heart, and she was carrying in her womb the noble child which she had given her, when Alcmene began, I pray that to you, at least, the gods may be kind, and hurry things on when, in the fullest of time, you call on Lucina, the goddess who watches over us weak women in childbirth, who, thanks to Juno's influence, was so harsh to me, for when the sun had reached the 10th of the heavenly signs, and time drew near for the birth of my son Hercules, who was to endure such labours, the weight of the baby stretched my womb, and the burden I carried was such that no one could tell Jove was responsible for what was hidden here. Was such that one could tell. I could not bear my pains any longer. Why, even as I speak to you now, a cold shudder runs through my limbs, and it hurts me to remember. What was that? I think it was just a noise from the microphone. Sounded like mice in the attic. I hope not. It hurts to remember. For 7 nights and as many days, tortured and worn out with agony, I stretched my arms to the sky and cried aloud to Lucina and her helpers, the gods of birth. Lucina came, it is true, but she had been bribed beforehand and was prepared to surrender my life to cruel Juno. Though she heard my moans, she sat herself by the altar, in front of the door, crouching there, with her right leg crossed over her left, and fingers intertwined. She prevented the baby's birth. She murmured spells, too, in a low voice, which held back the child when it had begun to be born. I struggled, and in my frenzy heaped abuse on Jupiter for his ingratitude. But it was all to no purpose. Lamenting in words that would have moved flinty stones, I prayed to die. The women of Thebes who were present echoed my prayers and comforted my distress. One of my servant maids was with me, a golden-haired girl called Galanthis, who was humbly born, but assiduous in carrying out my orders, and dear to me for the services she performed. She realized that cruel Juno was up to some mischief. As she was constantly passing in and out of the house, she noticed the goddess Lucina sitting by the altar, her arms crossed upon her knees. She spoke to her and said, "Whoever you are, send your congratulations to my mistress. Alcmene of Argolis has had her prayers answered, and is newly delivered of her child." The goddess of birth leaped to her feet in consternation, loosening her clasped hands, and as soon as these bonds were slackened, I myself was delivered of my baby. The story goes that Galanthis laughed at the goddess whom she had deceived. But as she laughed, the cruel goddess seized her by the hair, dragged her down to the ground, and when the girl attempted to raise herself, prevented from doing so. Then she turned Galanthis's arms into forelegs, and altered her shape. Though her hair kept its original colour, she was changed into a weasel. And because falsehoods issuing from her lips had helped woman give birth to her child, her young ones too are born by way of her mouth. But she is... Hang on, is that right? Yes, it is. But she is as active and energetic as ever, and still haunts my house as she did before. Alcmene sighed as she spoke, moved by the memory of her former servant. Her daughter-in-law comforted her, as she grieved, saying, "After all, the mother, the girl whose loss of human shape causes you such distress, was not one of our own family. What would you say, I wonder, if I told you of the strange calamity which befell my sister? Though it upsets me so much that it is difficult for me to speak of it, and my tears almost prevent me from telling you the story." The girl whose name was... I think we should stop here, actually, because this is going on to another story, and I'm too tired to read this. I've reached my limit, and I will put my bookmark in, and that will be the end of my week. On Monday, we shall read Aristotle again, and perhaps we will finally get into some of the substance of the book. But that was Ovid Metamorphoses. At least some of it. And we are still in ancient times, having not yet even reached the Trojan War. But we are still in the days of Hercules. That was fun. That was fun. The lighting was fairly stable, and the camera didn't bounce around too much. So I'm quite happy with that. I think the reading was somewhat smooth. There was some fumbling here and there. I could have been more clearer. But overall, not too bad. And I still don't have an outro. I still don't have anything on these shelves. What on earth can I put on these shelves To be quite frank, I don't even use this screen too much. If I'm doing art, I'm in the art screen. If I'm reading, I'm in my various reading scenes. If I'm playing a game, I'm on the gaming stream. I don't have much opportunity to be in this room here, so it's somewhat pointless to fill it with anything. Though I would like to have even more rooms than this. I would like to... You see that window up there? I would like to have a scene that is in that room up there, looking down out the window. I would like to have some scenes in other rooms, but I have no purpose for them. Always the trouble. Well, anyway, thanks for watching. Tune in next week.